Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Corner Blue. I'm Hugo Alvarado here with Andrés Rico. And today we are on episode 19, believe it or not. Andrés, can you believe that we've been doing this for almost over 6 months now?
Yeah, I think we're just a little bit over, right? Because we started back in August and little by little, right? And I mean, it's still crazy that, La Selecta has only played once since, but we've had all this stuff to talk about. And we're gonna keep updating you guys. And this is a place to do it. It's a blue month, everybody. This is a month that I've been waiting for a while, knowing that there would be at least 5 matches. Teams from El Salvador, national teams from El Salvador playing. So we'll break that down for you, the schedule, get out your agendas or mark it down on your phone. And we'll be breaking that down pretty soon because it's coming up, right, Hugo?
Yeah, it's a busy month. La Zulita U23, the senior team, starts or continues with the road to the World Cup. And today we're going to have for you the 5 foreign-based players that are going to be joining the U23. So we're going to let you know who those 5 players are. So stay tuned, listen to the whole podcast so you can know the names of those players who will be joining La Zulita from Europe and the United States.
You mean you're gonna give some information? You're gonna give us a scoop here on the podcast, and it's not gonna be on Selecta Talent on
A
Facebook?
premiere for English
Oh,
speakers who follow La
dang.
Selecta.
Hey, you heard it here, ladies and gentlemen. So we are gonna get, I guess you could call it a scoop, but yeah, we get to update you on what the final roster is gonna probably look like. It's almost down to the wire. I know the team is heading on out on Wednesday the 10th to Guadalajara. I was watching a series of interviews during the week on El Gráfico TV. Diego Enriquez was on one night. Then they had Hugo Perez, and they were breaking some stuff down, kind of giving the important dates.
They
And
haven't had me. I can't believe they haven't had me on any of those shows yet.
uh, you have to be a paid employee, I think, to be on.
Okay, got it, got it.
Soon enough, man. Hopefully, seriously, you deserve some bank in your pocket, and hopefully, it's just a matter of time before that happens. But according to the info that they gave and reports coming out of El Salvador as well, yeah, the team's heading out to Guadalajara on Wednesday the 10th. It seems that a friendly match with Costa Rica has been scheduled for the 14th. And it's crunch time. I know it's been a stressful week for you, Hugo, functioning not only as scout, but also as like a liaison for the festival, trying to make sure that the logistics or things fall into place so that at least players have that eligibility. Because yes, we had Gilbert, we had Calvillo join up early, Alguera, Sorto as well. They were all part of the preselección or the camps. They left an impression, and all of them had to go back to the U.S. at one point because they had, their return flight. But it seems that Calvillo has caught the eye of Perez out of all the field players. And he got his passport. It was last week that they announced it, which is pretty exciting. But can you update us on who else from the foreign-born players are going to be included on this list?
Ready?
Drum roll. Hit them with it.
It's public information, people. So, but you heard it here first.
Maybe.
So,
Hopefully.
the 5 foreign-based players that I know are some pending, but there's some FIFA permissions still pending. But fingers crossed, everything should go through on time. I don't see any major issues with that situation, but it's going to be Tomas Romero from LAFC, Alguera from the San Jose Earthquakes Academy, the young goalkeeper. That's a big surprise. 17-year-old joining a U23 team. I've heard big things about him. I think that if you're going to take a 17-year-old to a U23, he must really be very mature at many levels to be in a U23 squad. And then Eric Calvillo from the San Jose Earthquakes, Josh Perez from Ibiza in the Segunda B in Spain, and Enrico Hernandez from Vitesse in the Netherlands. Those are the 5 foreign-based players that are going to be in that final list, as long as they get their permission to switch associations by FIFA. All the letters have been sent, and we're just waiting. So out of all of those players, Tomas Romero, of course, has been part of previous national teams, so he doesn't have to do anything, but all other 4 are still pending the approval from FIFA.
Okay, so at least we know that the paperwork's been sent in. That part isn't up in the air right now. It's just a matter of getting that response in due time from FIFA. And that's exciting, man. I remember just within the recent months how, it didn't seem like there were too many players interested or on the radar in terms of bringing like a new wave of foreign-born players. And then all of a sudden, I remember you hitting me up and telling me like, "Oh yeah, this might be a possibility. This might be a possibility." And it was like boom, 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 boom. And you don't want to have too high expectations on this U23 team, considering the problems that they've had just even getting together because of COVID, because of not having a coach until the last minute. But I think there's some interesting pieces here that make me believe that they at least have some capacity, or they do have the ability to have a great, performance or role in this tournament. I think the best thing is like approaching without any expectations and then getting, surprised in a great way. And that's kind of the approach that I take with most international tournaments that La Selecta plays or La Solita plays, just because we know what the tendency is, and I do it for my own sanity. But Hugo, can you break it down? What was that process of getting these surprise responses from players that you wouldn't even have thought, were even on the radar or were even thinking about the possibilities themselves?
I mean, it's been a well coordinated work with myself and Diego Enriquez. Obviously, fast food bringing Diego in has played a huge part. Diego brought me in, and I'm grateful for that. But yes, I mean, as a lot of people who follow me and select the talent know that I've been working with Enrico for a while. I mean, it's probably been over a year, probably about a year and 2 months, something like that. So with him, I've been part of the whole process from the beginning to the end, to the bumpy times and when things seemed like they may or may not happen. And now here we are. Now it's a possibility. So I always knew Enrico would join at some point. I didn't know if it was going to be this U23. We tried to bring him to the U20 that was canceled, and then as right after I was named the official scout, then I started reaching out to players like Calvillo, who I knew about him, but I had not spoken directly to him. And yeah, it was a process. It was with Calvillo, it was teamwork. It was me talking to him initially, then setting up conversations with Diego, just to present the project and the vision for some of these foreign-based players. It's always important to show them the possibilities. Not only, hey, we are interested in having you play for the U23 or the U20, but presenting more of a long-term process. We obviously want you for the U23 now, but we are looking at you as a player who can join our senior team in the future, and then you'll be a big part of the future of the Selecta. And a lot of these players have never been called. They had never received an official call from anyone. So most of them have been very receptive to that call. And then, well, Alguera, that's 100% Hugo Perez. He knew him from the Northern California, where he has academies and has been involved in other projects there. And then Tomas Romero, well, we know that he had already played. And then Josh. I mean, yes, if you ask me, I mean, I have to be very straightforward. I had tried very hard to get a hold of Josh, and it was just not happening. It was difficult, but as a scout, you have to do what you have to do to talk to the players, and eventually, before before Hugo was named actually the official coach, I had already spoken to Josh. I mean, obviously, having Hugo as the coach helped to get his interest in playing for La Selecta, but both Diego and I had already started the process of talking to him and getting him interested, and he was definitely very interested and on board. And then from there, um, fast food took over with the documentation and getting Cancilleria involved and different consulates around the world. I was fully involved with Enrico because I personally fill out a lot of the paperwork myself and send documentations and everything else. And I mean, it's been a roller coaster with him because of the whole COVID situation. A lot of things closed in the Netherlands. Um,
And
just for
also the
some of
first team on the horizon for him as well. So it's like a delicate
it,
situation with his club or the steps that he's taking for his professional career.
right. It's everything changes when you go from being a U21 player to being a pro player in the first team, because the first team has obviously signed you because they see the potential. And when you have a competition like in the Netherlands, where you have the league, a very long league, 34 games, I believe, plus you have the cup going at the same time, you need to have, plus COVID, you know, clubs are allowed to have 5 substitutions these days. Coaches need to make use of all of their squad. So yeah, it's been an interesting ride. Also, the only consulate in the Netherlands is about 2 hours, 2.5 hours away from where he lives. So it's a lot of going back and forth. And but luckily, within the last week, a lot of work by myself, by Diego Enriquez, we were able to pull it off, and right now it looks like it's gonna happen. So it's been a lot of work from different sides. Definitely, uh, the help of Cancilleria and trying to speed up a lot of the processes that normally take a couple months
Yeah,
and
I think
make
that was
them.
like the game changer, it seems, because as you had mentioned before, some of these processes take months, just because of the bureaucracy or logistics or the slowdown because of the pandemic as well, or accessibility. And it seemed that, yeah, once I think within like a week or week and a half, it seems that you guys or someone was able to make that contact with the canciller, and it changed
Yeah,
around quick because I remember, yeah, the process with Enrico was like, we sent the documentation and it's gonna take a while. We don't know when it's coming in. And now to fast forward a week and a half later, and now you're waiting on FIFA. I think
yeah,
that's pretty amazing. I think certain pieces have fallen in place in a way that we haven't seen previously. I think the only unfortunate thing is you'd always would wish there was more time in terms of preparing for a tournament like this. But considering all the factors and the help from Cancilleria, I think, things are looking pretty bright despite all the rolling upstream that needs to be done. Because so far, right, if everything pans out with Josh Perez, I heard that he wouldn't be able to arrive to camp in Guadalajara until the 15th, right?
I believe that's the information, and it will be the same for Enrico, either the 15th or the 16th. Um, as you know, clubs are only I don't even know this anymore, because as there's news coming out of South America where the European clubs are not letting their players go to the qualifiers in CONMEBOL, but it's usually 5 days before the first match that clubs are um, obligated by FIFA to release their players. But right now, it's with COVID, there's a lot of restrictions to travel to certain countries. And then you have to take into consideration that on their way back, there are other protocols that need to be followed in quarantine. So a lot of these players, don't want to miss all of that time. And I think that that's important to point out in Enrico's case, for example. I don't know much about how the Spanish Spain situation is right now, but in Enrico's case, when he returns, he might have to quarantine for 10 days. So that's like another 10 days that you miss with your club. So it's a big effort. And I think it's of course it's a win-win situation for both. It's important for Enrico's career to play for the national team. But it's also a big effort on his end to leave his club, who's going to be playing the cup final and possibly earn a spot in the Europa League if they win against Ajax. Um, it's a lot, and it's a long flight, 15, 16, 20 hours in some cases. So it's a big effort that these players are making. And yes, you always want more time, right? And Hugo Perez has had 2 months, and obviously that's not enough. Um, we're all looking forward to this. I think it's unprecedented to have um, the amount of players that we currently have playing first division already.
I think, yeah, that's
Um,
one of the big pluses that hasn't really existed before and hasn't been highlighted enough too, because obviously the foreign-born players get a lot of the attention or hype. But yeah, like you mentioned, some of these names are starting to pop up in the first division, or if you're not able to watch the matches, you're able to see the highlights week in, week out. And yeah, some of these names are starting to pop up where you do recognize, you see some of the plays that they've done, and that is a huge factor.
it's a huge factor, and yes, I mean, for if a listener from Chile or Uruguay or Argentina is listening to us, they're like, what are you talking about? I
Yeah,
mean, it's
exactly.
U23. There should all be senior players by
Yeah.
U23. That is true. But that hasn't always been the case for us.
Not commonplace in the
Usually,
Salvador. Nope.
yeah, usually we play U23 tournaments with players from the second division or from the third division, and that shows, in the way we compete. In this case, yes, not all the players are playing every weekend, but they are part of first division teams, and they do play here and there. So that's important. That's a big plus. And how many times have we heard of a Salvadorian national team, whether that's senior or youth, with 5 foreign-based players? I mean, the last U20 that El Tuco had, the one where Dustin was, I mean, at some point there was Dustin Correa, Alan Rovira, Michael Funes, and there was a fourth one, Enrique Irving Herrera. That was, you have four players. This time we have 5 and 2 out of Europe. So we're hopeful. I mean, I'm hopeful. You can always hope for the best, and and at the same time, not that we are being conformistas, but the reality is that you cannot set super high expectations of a team that has only been training for 2 months, or but the microciclos, which are like 3 days for 2 months. For us, at least, for us in El Salvador, that's probably not enough time. Obviously, when you have players who are playing in MLS or playing in Europe day in and day out, of course, they can probably get together for 2 weeks and have a very competitive team, but that's not the case for us.
You're going to see a team with some growing pains, and I think that's the factor with the time, that you'd hope that more preparation, mini camps in other countries or friendlies against other countries would have helped to fine tune things. So I think we're going to see a team with a lot of growing pains, and also for the coach as well. I mean, his role has been as a scout for the Mexican Federation. He's obviously been coaching youth teams at the academy that he works, or his academy in NorCal in the Bay. But this is also a pretty big debut for him as a head coach, and it was interesting hearing some of his thoughts on El Gráfico TV. We tried reaching out to him, but he's busy with stuff, so we haven't been able to talk to him. Hopefully we'll be able to talk to him sometime soon, either leading up to the tournament or after, just to digest everything. But he was mentioning some of his philosophies in terms of working a lot on the mentality of players, and kind of using himself as a reference, where he was able to come out of El Salvador, start a professional career in a country that really did not have a professional league at all, did not have a competitive national team at all, and was able to make a career professionally and help turn the program around. So he mentioned that he uses himself as a reference point, that, look, I was able to make it during dark ages in a country in terms of soccer, and things have turned around. You can too. So I think that's interesting. That's very positive. I also thought it was interesting that he was mentioning trying to find a game within a game. If you watch The Last Dance, you kind of got to see how Michael Jordan would find those mini games within a game to stay hungry, maintain that drive, be competitive. And I think that's also important, to try and find those angles. I'm still waiting to see how his tactics are, what his style of play is going to be. Because unfortunately I wasn't able to see any of the friendly matches. And also it's hard to gauge those matches, because he didn't have his final squad for those games. So they're just basically scrimmages, so you can't really draw too many conclusions from that. But he does seem pretty confident in his back line, especially his center backs. I've been looking, and they're pretty tall players. Beyond that, I don't know too much information on them, but I think, if we have any height in our center backs, that's going to be a plus. And then you add the technical aspect that most Salvadoran players have, that's something to build upon. And then you look at the midfield. The midfield has, various pieces that he can play with, both domestic players and the foreign-based players. I think in terms of people like Josh Perez coming in and Enrico, unfortunately, they're not going to have time to gel. I wouldn't necessarily expect them to be in the starting 11 on that first match. I think they're pieces that, depending on that result of the first match, we'll see where they'll fit in Hugo's tactics, or his idea of how he's going to play the tournament out. I think these tournaments, and so they're so short, anything can happen, and it seems like it's just something of a day-to-day gut feelings, and we'll see what happens with this.
Yes, Andres, I think you make a good point. It's going to be important for this foreign based players more specifically in the case of Josh and Enrico, to see how fast they can adapt to their teammates, to whatever Hugo Perez style of play is. And I mean, a player like Josh, he has had more experience. He played Serie C in Italy he was a pretty solid player for Livorno. And then he played LAFC. He had some games in LAFC. I mean, he even made his debut in the Serie A when he was with Fiorentina. So obviously he's playing international soccer already. So he has experience. I hope that he can adjust very quickly. In the case of Enrico, he has less of that experience, but you're not in the first team in the Netherlands just because. I think there's a lot of maturity in him, both in and out of the field. I have noticed that, so I'm hopeful that they can adjust quickly. But yes, I agree with you that I wouldn't be surprised if they don't start. I mean, I'm not saying they shouldn't or not, but if they don't start, I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, there's a lot of guys who have been training day in day out under Hugo Perez for 2 months, and um, as a coach, that's where he makes the best decision that he thinks is the best at that time, and trust your gut instinct in that case.
Yeah, these types of tournaments, players end up with certain roles because of the short amount of time. Things just manifest themselves in that way. And like you mentioned, I think it wouldn't be too disingenuous to think that they wouldn't make that start, considering, like you said, that the players have been in camp busting ass and trying to prove themselves. And I think at least for the first match, we'll probably see, Enrico and Josh come off the bench, considering that they won't even have had time to play the unofficial match, the friendly or the scrimmage against Costa Rica. So you could consider it a huge risk if you just insert them into the 11, but you would think that, for cohesion reasons and also just respecting the player's effort and just certain codes, you expect that, yeah, you'll see them come on, depending on the outcome of the match. If El Salvador is winning, I think later in the game you'll see a more defensive, squad being put out there. The changes would be more defensive. If it were somehow a blowout, that would obviously be the ideal situation to give these guys more minutes in the second half. So we'll see how it plays out. It's just exciting in the sense that, there's this talented squad. They're going to have 3 really important games, and we get to see it unfold within like a week and a half. And I think that's the exciting part. And just moving forward, okay, these players that we didn't know about or were off of the radar, off the grid, now are wearing that blue kit. And that player pool for the senior squad has just, amplified itself by 23 players go on the final list, something like that, or 20. And so I think
It's 22.
that's the main thing that at least I'm trying to look at through that perspective of, oh, wow, U23, you're right on the brink. You could be or should be even on the first team. And this basically opens up even more options for that senior squad. So we'll see what turns out with this. But yeah, just thinking that Enrico might get his minutes, his debut, Josh, Calvillo, I think that's great. You want to be able to bring in these players that are important leagues from the outside and get that stamp, get that kit on them, so that there are options moving forward.
Calvillo's a solid player. I know that I focus more right now on Josh and Enrico because they're joining more on the later side, but Calvillo's a solid player. He also, if you look at the age, he's at that max limit, which in many ways that's what you want in a youth team. If it's a U20, you can have 17-year-olds, 18-year-olds, but you want to have that 20-year-old in there who's right at the limit because of their experience. So Calvillo's there. I believe he's already 23. He has had a decent amount of minutes in MLS. He played a lot of minutes in the NASL when he was playing with the Cosmos. He has played USL. He brings a lot of experience, and from what I've heard, he's left a very, very good impression in El Salvador. So yeah, I think he's going to be a very important player in that midfield. That center midfielder, breaking plays, distributing the ball. He can play in different areas in the midfield. I think he's going to be a key player for this national team, and I hope that Enrico and Josh can also be key players. And if those three can play really well with the rest of the guys, I think we might have a very interesting U23. And just to go backwards a little bit, some fans have asked about what happened with Marcus, what happened with Gilbert, Sorto. Those players are not being considered for the U23. And I think one important factor for us to know, I'm speaking as a fan right now, but also I'm speaking as a scout. Let's be mindful that not every player that goes from abroad is going to stay. It doesn't mean that they're not good players. I think as a Salvadorian federation, I think we've taken a big step in opening the doors for those players. Gilbert is young. He qualifies for the U20. He would definitely be considered for a U20 national team or U21 if we have one for the Central American Games. Sorto left a good impression as well, but he was not chosen this time. And Marcus, the same with Marcus. Marcus is a U20 player, and we'll see what the future has for them. I mean, it's positive that Marcus already has his passport. Let's keep seeing what he does with Edmonton when the season begins. So it's all positive. I think, obviously, as fans and as a scout, I'm the one reaching out to a lot of these players initially. I want them to stay. But at the end of the day, the coach makes his decisions based on which players he thinks are going to serve him well for his style of play. Doesn't mean the players are not good. It just means that there's maybe other players that he thinks fit better within his system. So I just wanted to point that out, because I don't want to, the fans to think, oh, what happened with Gilbert, or what happened with Marcus. They're still on the radar, and they qualify for other youth national teams. So we'll see what the future holds for them. I hope that we can see them wearing la azul y blanco.
It's just time to kind of step back from like the black or white way of looking at it, where, if you're from outside El Salvador, there's that tendency kind of to think, oh, if a player is developing as a professional on the outside, that they can go to El Salvador and wreck and, automatically earn a spot. That isn't necessarily the case. And I think your job, and that's what people kind of have a hard time with, is they think that you are finding people to insert them, like create like this pipeline directly into the starting 11 or the squads, in a way that, the coaches will just take any recommendation blindly and boom, they're on the starting 11. That's not what happens here. I think that's what we need to step back. And I think with this latest development of some of those players being born outside, not being considered this time around or making that final squad, that it will open some eyes that this isn't about, just because he plays in an X club outside of El Salvador, let's just throw him in there. That's not how it works. Obviously,
Tiene cuello.
eso, O solo porque nació fuera, lo ponen. Like I read, and I think this was more clickbait on one of the publications out of El Salvador that had Meme Rivera saying, si no encuentra o sabe dónde está El Salvador en el mapa, no lo pueden señalar con el dedo en el mapa, no lo traigan. And I think that's just the extreme way of looking at things. There are going to be players that haven't had that opportunity to go to El Salvador for whatever reason, but that does not mean that culturally they do not feel, those roots or that connection to the country. And as we've been revealing here, every interview that we've had with foreign born players, at certain points they didn't even have that concept or that liaison or that bridge to even think about the possibilities. So I think this is like the latest wave that I think has gotten that attention. And especially I think it's a positive thing that some of these players that you would think would make the squad, or you hope they would, based off of the clubs that they come from or their experience as players, and not making it, shows you, we have to look at the domestic talent. You can never forget the domestic talent.
Right.
Then there's that other level of, then you have the press starting to question the level of the players born outside of El Salvador. And then they try and put them under a magnifying glass and like, oh, they come here and they suck. Well, the answer to that is pretty simple. It's adjusting to the climate. It's adjusting to the style of play. It's adjusting to the logistics and mostly lack thereof. And yeah, when you have players that basically are propped up by good logistics, right? And they go to the harsh reality that exists in El Salvador at the league level and national team. Well, yeah, it is a culture shock. And then on top of that, it's just adjusting to, the food, the climate. You don't know what their accommodations are, where they're staying. It's there's all these factors that it's just, you need to try and stay away from the black and white or putting things in boxes. And I think the most important thing that we can grab out of this whole process, whether this team makes it to that fourth game or Tokyo or not, is, look, the more players you bring, the better off these teams are. And the more players that you can get that passport to and be eligible from a younger age leaves the door open a lot longer so that they do have that possibility of being called up. And the story here definitely isn't over for Gilbert, for Marcos, for Sorto. This is just the beginning. And I don't know what impression they got from the fast food, and that's something that they're going to have to work on, is how do you create this rapport with players so that even if they didn't make it in this window, right, because of last minute call ups and whatnot, or not having that communication or time with them, that, okay, what's it going to look like in the future? How can we make sure that these players know that it's still a possibility so that they don't get swooped up by other countries, because that is
Right.
always a possibility.
Right. I mean, just look at how many players go through the U.S. system before they get called to a final list. There are hundreds of players that get called for camps and here and there, and it's just a matter of, like I've said, when I started doing what I do, planting that seed, and that planting that seed can be giving them a call, right, and saying, hey, we know that one of your parents is Salvadorian. We're following you. We're following your career, and that's what I do. I do a lot of that, and then you bring them into camp. That's even a bigger deal. Now there are in the radar. They know that they're Salvadorians. They know that the federation knows about them. That the coaches know about them, and being in the national team means that you are the best player at that time, right? Players go through phases, and you never know when that opportunity is going to come. Personally, I feel very, very excited and looking forward to what Gilbert and Marcus and Sorto can do for us moving forward. I'm not. I think this was just a step. Just one step, and hopefully like you said, they had a good enough impression to go back if another opportunity comes. And for us, for me, for the federation, trying to think about what can we do to reduce the culture shock that these players go through, whether that's having better logistics, from flights, from food to the place they stay, to having better fields to train on. All of those things we have to keep in mind. I mean, we had Tomas Granito here last week, and he was talking about how difficult it is to adjust to having fields that sometimes are like the surface of the moon, and you have to think differently when
or
you're
a
going to pass the
prairie.
ball. Right, you have to you have to adjust. So there are many things, and I'm hopeful that as we start bringing more players in, that we also work on improving the infrastructure so that these players can have the tools they need to succeed and adjust and have a good experience of playing for the selecta.
Yeah, I think this whole process basically is just opening the window on the need to restructure things, and just hearing, the plan that De Enriquez has in place, some of the plans that Hugo Perez has in place, if he stays beyond the 2.5 months that he was hired for originally. um, that's going to bear some fruit, and you have to focus on that. But then again, it's also important to being able to have that access, or the communication and the logistics available to reach out to foreign born players. And I think you start seeing that with this U23 in a more impacted way or intense way. You see the work that's being done and the fruit that it's bearing, albeit, it's a nail biter with some of the deadlines and whatnot. But if this is able to carry over to, younger youth, the younger levels, but also if you see this move up, it's going to bring really great results. And it's just a matter of having the right people there. And it seems that, granted, it's not the ideal situation, but just by naming a couple people here and there to handle stuff that was previously neglected, you're starting to see the positive effect of it. And just so you can mark your calendars, ladies and gentlemen, uh, the first match that El Salvador is playing, or its U23 is playing, is on Friday, March 19th. It says at 6 p.m. Eastern time, so it'll be 3 p.m. Pacific. The next match that El Salvador will be playing will be on Monday, March 22nd, 8:30 Eastern, 5:30 Pacific. And it'll close out the group stage on Thursday, March 25th, against Haiti at 7 p.m., 4 p.m. Pacific. Semifinals, in the case of El Salvador making it to that stage in the tournament, would be Sunday, March 28th. And there's two games that day. So the first semifinal would be played at 6 or 3 Pacific, 9 Eastern, 6 Pacific. And the winners of each semifinal are the ones that ultimately qualify to the Olympics. And then they play a final on March 30th. So we'll see how it goes. I think the main thing is just seeing the possibilities play themselves out. I think, the U23 show up with various pieces that can bring a lot to the table, rather than showing up with a limited bag of tools, basically. And I think, yeah, just bringing in someone like Bettis, we'll see how that plays out. And then obviously bringing in the European-based players, Calvillo, it should be interesting to see how they fit in with, like we mentioned, players that are already at the first division level in El Salvador. So it'll be a fun ride. And moving along, just wanted to give a shout out to Richard Menjivar. We saw the post that he posted during the week, showing or expressing some pretty intense news, or moments that he's had to go through recently with his family, with the birth of his child, and finally being able to take his child home after 51 days because of just some health issues that the baby was going through. So just want to send positive vibes and congratulations to Richard. I know you listen to us and you're liking our posts, and we definitely appreciate the interactions that you've had with us, and just wishing you and your family the best and lots of strength and as you go through these times. And obviously I hope you're enjoying finally being at home. I can't even imagine, going through, trials and tribulations like that, but knowing how level-headed Richard is, I imagine that he's handling it the best of ways, and his partner too. So again, just wanting to send out the best of vibes to Richard during these moments. And also wanted to give a shout out to Angel Portillo. He's another faithful listener. Thanks for sharing and liking the videos. Want to give a shout out to you and your brother Eric. You mentioned earlier and wanted to share with our audience that Angel basically is in this effort of trying to start taking players based in the US and trying to find them a spot or getting them tryouts with the reserve teams or the youth teams of professional teams in El Salvador, such as Alianza and Limeño. Currently, Angel's brother Eric is playing for the reserves and Limeño, and he was mentioning that, yeah, he's had to go through the same process and seen the same issues that, Granito has brought up, that Mayen has brought up, and that, yeah, that whole transition process is pretty difficult. But again, shout out to Angel for trying to improve, that connection between the US and El Salvador and trying to improve Salvadoran soccer. We appreciate that because all of us benefit, from doing something positive, and you can do something positive, even if it's from the comfort of your home, or if you're not even in El Salvador. I mean, look at the guy that I'm talking with, he's someone that just decided to, do something about stuff, and he's doing it. So props to Angel, props to Eric for trying to make your dream happen. And really quick to close, I don't know if you guys noticed I found a training jersey, a new training jersey. I've been waiting for the new kit to come out for La Selecta. It's been like since November that uh, Hugo Carrillo mentioned that the new kit was going to be released. I'm still waiting on it. I even have the Japan one on instead because I'm going through the withdrawals. But I noticed it on Siman. If you check it out, I'll put on the post as well. But there's a training kit. I don't know if it's adjacent to what the final kit's going to look like. I don't know if La Selecta is going to release the new kit once they start playing Granada in this next qualifying match day. Do you know anything about that, Hugo?
Nothing.
Yeah,
Zero.
so we're waiting on that. If you want to check it out, go to Siman. They're not a sponsor. I'm going to share their link. They're not a sponsor yet. But anyway, check it out. It has like this cool a V. I don't know if it's printed or not. I don't know what your opinion is on it. Maybe you can hit us up on that link. We'll be sharing that on our Twitter as well as Instagram and our Facebook. Let us know what you think about that. But to close, Uro, anything you want to say?
Just looking forward to the next couple of weeks. First, looking forward to getting that FIFA approval for all those players. Hopefully, Monday or Tuesday we have a response, and we should know from Fesfood or Diego Enriquez when that takes place. So I'm just looking forward to that, and also looking forward to more players. There's a lot in the works, so stay tuned. There's more coming up.
Definitely, and that's going to be the exciting thing to see as more pieces start falling in. And just to backtrack a little bit, in case you're wondering, it seems that the qualifying tournament is going to be televised in the U.S. by Fox Sports and TUDN. So we'll see. Hopefully, they'll show that Zulita, or else we're just gonna have to find a way of finding that feed from Canal 4 in El Salvador and catch those matches. But we'll be talking soon, most likely next week. Hopefully, we'll be able to have a guest or at least talk quickly with Hugo Perez before the tournament starts. We'll see what happens. But again, thank you for tuning in. Thanks for interacting with us, the likes, the shares, the subscribing. Please keep sharing this word of mouth or with your friends, whether it's, on your story on Instagram or whatever you want to do. But again, we truly appreciate it, and get ready. It's going to be a blue month.
And shout out to Lisandro Claros before we leave. Lisandro Claros, some of you may know, he spent a lot of time in the United States, and he was deported. He took on an opportunity to go to university in the United States, and somehow during that process, he was called by immigration services. They innocently went to the interview on his way to college, and he was deported. He was on a soccer scholarship, and he ended up in El Salvador. Then he moved to Nicaragua to go to school there, and now looks like he's going to be in the final squad of the U23. So I mean, it's an amazing story. I'm really hoping that we can have him here on the show soon. But yes, I think it's great, that he took that he went through so much, and he continued on with his dream, and now he might be playing in an Olympic qualifier. So Lisandro Claros, congratulations.
Definitely a great story. I mean, it just shows that he's someone that's resilient, that's been able to handle various situations thrown at him that have been pretty intense and huge obstacles, and to see that he's been able to further his career. He was playing in the US, and to him be able to make that transition, whether he wanted to or not, but being able to continue with his career and making that team. I mean, imagine he's starting against the US. That will be a great feeling for him. I wonder what will be going through his mind. But yes, Lisandro, if you're listening, we want to talk to you, man. Hopefully we can have you on real soon before your debut. But until then, everybody, I hope you have a great week. I'm Andrés Rico. That's Hugo Alvarado. I think I'm pointing the right way. Maybe not. No, this way. I'm going to point this way this time because I messed up last time because I have it on mirror. But yeah, so I have Hugo over here. And enjoy the ride, ladies and gentlemen, because March is going to be fun. Bye.
Perdón.